where do you think out of all the places in America that you enjoy being the most?
Newport Beach, Los Angeles.
Newport Beach,
Yeah.
Los Angeles. One named after a cigarette, huh?
Yeah. It's a clean
Why
town.
Newport?
I love the people there. I got really good friends out there.
Oh, really? Los
It's
Angeles,
clean.
huh?
It's fun to drive. It's a good setup. Like good weather. Go to the beach.
Were you
Just
born
chill.
and raised San Francisco?
San Jose, which is an hour south.
Okay. But so you're gonna be a Cali guy, man. That's a
I don't know.
beautiful place to be home.
Yeah, I love it there. It's
Because
good fun.
home is really where the heart is. I'm not gonna lie. Like I've been out here, but I miss East Coast. Like I'm a Old Bay and Chesapeake Bay and Crabs kind of guy to
That's
this
fun.
day. I'm saying in Texas, I'm like, man, the land is flat, it's hot.
Stand on a step so we can see the whole state. But the community's great here.
Yeah, the community's
It's
great.
the Islamic institution. Like we'll come here for Ramadan. Like I came here with Rayan last year for Ramadan. Had a grand old time. I came here the week before with Imran. Like we'll go to the different lectures, the post moves after Tarawih, the halaqas, the qiyam prayers. It's a very nice community. It's very well built out.
Yeah,
Lots going on.
yeah, but I still miss my family.
Yeah, family's a big one.
Like home is huge. Like I wish my home and my family base was here or in Cali,
Yeah.
because then I'd be mostly chilling for the most part.
Hey man.
Cali's
Shall you move
nice.
them out?
No, no, no. My
No?
family would never move.
Yeah. I think my family's the same way in that they wouldn't move to like a Dallas or a New York.
Which is weird, man. Like I don't know where they get this money. It's like you moved from India, you moved from Egypt,
Yeah.
but then within the America, you're like, no,
They've
this
got
is my
people, right? I
home.
think everyone's got people. Like I don't think I care as much about the geography of or the mayor or whatever. In fact, I hate the taxes, right? But your people are there. Like I've had the same group of friends for the most part, um, since I was maybe like 16, right?
Yeah.
Which is like it's okay. It's like 5, 6 years. Um, but a lot of them went to college and they're all coming back. We still hang out like every few weeks, like not as much as we used to when we all lived right next to each other, but same group. And now we'll like all fly out to meet each other in Arizona and New York, and it's fun.
Very nice. Do you watch any sports? Do you have time for that?
I would have time for it. I just never got into it. Like all my friends are always like, "Oh, the Warriors and like F1." I like F1. I like watching Drive to Survive, which makes me a fake F1 fan.
Okay.
Um, yeah, like I would absolutely have time for sports. I spent time watching Instagram Reels and random YouTube videos. Like I think there's like this over optimization that people see when they think about like startup founders, and I'm like, dude, I'll go hang out with Rayanne at a coffee shop for 3 hours and talk about nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, we won't do that very often, but like on a daily basis, like I go to the gym, I'll like turn my phone on airplane mode, like, this is like we'll spend time doing the things that we want to do. And like that's why we're doing this, right? Like there's a big part of like I just want to optimize my life to be able to work on something that matters and work on it with the people I like and the people I like spending time about and the people I care about. I've gotten most of my friends to drop out of school and like work with me in some capacity or another. And like
That's why parents think you're a bad influence right there.
hey, I think their children all made, a lot more personal success and financial success than if they had stayed in school and worked a job for 5 years. So I think
Right.
they're fine.
Yeah.
But like I'm like I see this like there are very low lows. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of like, the stakes are kind of high. Like if I mess this up, like the people I actually care about get messed up the most. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But on a daily basis, like you just learn to kind of roll with it. Isn't that like most of what I've told you? Just like, hey, something happened. We kind of like tested it. Like we are strategic about how we go about things. I don't want people to think we're just like, in La La Land doing things because they look fun and they work. Like, no, we are very meticulous about we know how to experiment. We built an engine and a megaphone online such that anything we want to launch, we know that like within 1 or 2 tries we can get it to hit the mass, like, mass media. We have access to like, I won't say what it's called, but I own a media company in the Muslim world that has
It's Al Jazeera.
no, imagine it has like tens of millions of views and a couple 100,000 like followers online, and no one knows I'm associated with it at all. Like if I want to push something through there, I can. And we were intentional about building things that way because we want to be able to stay in the game. Like half of building a startup is just playing the game for as long as you possibly can through all the failures without getting burnt out mentally or without getting burnt out financially. Because as long as you got a little bit left in the tank here, you got enough left in the tank in the bank account, you'll fail your way to success. No one will remember the failures. All they will remember is the thing that you made work. Unless you do
Mm,
something unethical or you mess someone over. But we try not to do those things.
yeah. Omar Waseem, founder of Alif. Thank you so much for joining the Ansari podcast, brother. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So I'm looking at your resume, man, and this is very impressive. You started your first company when you were 12 years old and became the CMO of I think it's a 200 billion, or am I getting it wrong here? A $2 billion company that sold for $2 billion. And then you dropped out of Berkeley to lead growth at Founders Inc. And then in the last 2 years, you've created Alif, which is a venture capitalist investment firm supporting Muslim businesses and startups. This is incredible, and I believe you're only 21 years
Yeah,
old.
alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Can you tell me a little bit about what drives you to do this? I mean, this is not a normal life path you've gone down.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I grew up in the Bay Area. And so when I was 12 years old, I had the very noble cause of wanting to buy an Xbox. My friends had just got one. I was in a HIF school at the time. And, my parents were like, yeah, you can have an Xbox, but you have to get the money for it yourself. And so that turned into like, a video editing agency. And that spiraled into a bunch of other projects and companies. But there was like a very clear, like a very just boring answer of like, I wanted an Xbox. And that spiraled a lot of this, a lot of what came next. And throughout high school, I was always working on random stuff. And like, that was my reputation within the friend group and with their parents of like, he's kind of off doing his like random side projects. And then we turned it like, that turned
Like business side
businesses.
projects?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And what made you do businesses? I mean, I was wilding out in high school. I wasn't thinking about any business. Most young people aren't thinking about starting a business in high school. What made you start that?
When I went to high school, I was online schooled. My dad would be, we lived in San Francisco, or we lived in the Bay Area, and my dad was going back and forth between Los Angeles and the Bay. And so Monday through Friday, I was online schooled. I was kind of, for half of high school, I was at a HIVS program. For half of high school, I wasn't. I was just like in the school, like just doing normal high school things. Um, and I had a lot of free time. And like I told you, I started off by editing these videos for YouTubers, and I would watch and I would see how much money they were making from doing these sponsorships and from doing these campaigns. And a lot of them didn't have that big of an audience. And so I was like, okay, I'm like editing videos for these guys who are getting paid to travel. What if I could get paid to travel? Very simple as that. The first sleepover I ever had, because my parents were quite strict growing up, was a sleepover in Morocco with my sheikh. It was the first time I was ever allowed to leave the house and like go on a sleepover. And that was a result of having us done some work with a nonprofit and a tourism board. And we'd work with Lexus, and they'd give us a car and that we were like trying to launch for them. And we'd be 15 without our driver's licenses. So my dad would drive us up, from the Bay Area up to Oregon so that we can make some like random campaign for like penny boards or for Lexus or whatever. And I just found so much enjoyment in doing that. But I also wanted it to be sustainable so that I could keep doing the thing. And at first it was a marketing agency. Then when I was in Morocco, we ended up launching a clothing brand. We went viral on TikTok. We started a few trends that did really well. We sold out like one or two drops. And then I was like, I do not want to deal with physical goods. We did a podcast because at that point I had friends who were like, joining the Hype House when it was like a cool thing to do. And so I was like, oh, I want to make interviews with you. Like Ali Abdal, for example, the first episode he's ever done the first podcast interview he's ever done was with me when I was 14 years old. And so I was just like following my curiosity, and then, we'd figure out later how to make it sustainable and how to monetize it so that we could make money, but more importantly, so that it was a thing I could do where I could support myself and, basically buy myself the ability to keep doing those things.
And this was all at 14,
14 through 16.
14 through 16. And then at 16, is that when you joined that $2 billion company?
No. So when I was 16, it's a funny story. I had my $1 billion idea. It wasn't a $1 billion idea. I was going to build a social app to make plans with your friends, which is like the most stereotypical San Francisco first-time founder idea. Like it's been done hundreds of times. And I really went through with the cliches. I had stealth startup founder in my LinkedIn bio, and my friends would ask me what I was working on. And, it's a consumer social app, so I should be telling them, hey, try it out. But instead I'm like, nah, like this is a secret. Like I can't tell you I'm working on a startup. And I burned through every dollar I had made on that marketing agency with trying to hire developers. And so I took a gap year actually after high school. In my head, I was like, this was around the time COVID was happening. And so I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense now with the world slowing down for me to go and make the reversible decision of like, what if I just don't go to school? This idea seems cool. I could make it work. I thought it would work. 13 months later, it was very apparent that like this isn't going anywhere. I'm out of money. I'm like back to square one. At that point, the flaw that I saw was that I didn't know how to code. And so I was like, all right, I am going to go to Berkeley for engineering, because I'm either going to meet a technical co-founder, someone to build my ideas with me, or at the very least case, I'll become my own technical co-founder, and I'll like kind of learn the skills that I would need to go ahead and build my own ideas myself. And in my second month of school, I met, the CEO of the project, Faye, and I went up to him after, and he was talking about, oh, we had this protocol. It's like looking like it's going to be a big deal, but they had no one on their team with marketing. And so I saw my opportunity, got his phone number. I took a picture with him. I texted him the picture, and I was like, hey, I got something for you. You mind if I pull up to your office tomorrow? I stayed up till 5 a.m. that night making a pitch deck as to like why he should hire me. And I went into there thinking it would be like, like a good first type of role. Like I could see what it's like to build a startup. And I walked out of there with the CMO title. And like, I remember when I was trying to negotiate my salary, I was like, okay, so if I anchor really high at like 5 times what I actually want, I'll get to what I want. And he gave in after the first check. So I ended up with like 4 times what I actually wanted as a salary. And at that point, I was like ready to, considering dropping out of school and kind of going full time. And it was with them that I got fast tracked into San Francisco because we raised a little bit of money from Andreessen Horowitz, which is obviously one of like the main VC firms in Silicon Valley. And we had a really strong team. And then, yeah, a couple months later, we went through one of the largest merges of decentralized assets of all time.
MashaAllah. And after that, I mean, now you're one of the youngest, if not the youngest, Muslim American millionaire. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. May Allah protect you and safeguard you from any harm with that. Why go on to make something like Alif? I mean, you can basically retire, call it a day, go to Spain, travel around, become an influencer, make those videos where you say, here's how to make $1 million in 2 days.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? The way equity works is that you vest it over 4 years, right? And there's like a 1 year cliff. And so, alhamdulillah, I made life-changing money, but I didn't make actually money to the point where I would never have to work again. And so, I maybe bought myself like a bit of time, like a while where I didn't have to worry about it. But I also was never doing it for the money, right? Like I was doing all of this because I just genuinely was like passionate about it, as cringy as that sounds. Like it really was just like the only thing I could think about. I would, be in class, and it really took a toll on my health because I was so caught up in it that I'd be sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day. I'd go to bed at like 10, 11 p.m. My head would hit the pillow, and then I'd be awake for another 5 or 6 hours just thinking about work. The Fajr Adhan would come in, I still hadn't fallen asleep. And so I'll pull an all-nighter, or I'll get 2 or 3 hours of sleep before waking up and having to go to class the next day because I was still in school while we were building this company. And then it got to the point where I'm just basically, falling asleep in Ubers, falling asleep at class, falling asleep during meetings. And it really took a toll on my health, not because I was like desperate for some outcome, but because I just couldn't stop thinking about the things that we were working on.
Yeah, I completely understand that. But why? I mean, I'll ask you something. I believe you saw the Idol from Boycott interviews. The question he asked me, which is, when you meet the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment, I mean, what would you like him to recognize you as? Why do you do what you do?
I'll answer that with a story. And it's actually because I felt like there was a moment in my time, very short moment, one day actually, where I thought I was going to die. It was like my, close to death story. I said my shahada again because I thought I wasn't making it out of that moment. And so, to recap, maybe a year or two before that moment, this is after I had left the company, after I had left Faye. I knew that I wanted to stay in startups, but I knew that my next thing I was either going to start my own company or work for someone that was Muslim and like see what learnings there were there. Because again, like for me, it was never about this whole like I need to build my own company and be my own man. I just genuinely wanted to do whatever it was that would allow me to do the things I'm interested in. And so I met this guy. His name's Furqan, and he was working on a company called Third Web. They're a Web3 company. They're like the Stripe or AWS, but for like crypto. And I sought him out because I knew that there was a dinner that they were hosting at a conference called ETH Denver. And I went to this conference and I basically had one goal in mind, which is by the end of this conference, I want to work for this guy. The Muslim guy, he had IPO'd a company for $30 billion. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, Muslim billionaire, like I'd love to work for someone like that. And I sneak my way into the dinner, actually. I am walking down the street, and this is like a private dinner, but they were advertising it. And so I was really trying to figure out a way to get into it. And someone was walking down the street. He had a Third Web hoodie on. And I was like, hey, like I've seen you before on Twitter. I'd never seen this guy before. I didn't know what his name was. But my luck has it, he was like a developer influencer with 60,000 followers. So me stopping him on the side of the street saying I'd seen him before was completely normal. We talked for a couple minutes, and he actually knew of my last company. So he's like, hey, we're hosting this dinner tomorrow. You should come through. Look at my calendar. I'm like, oh, let me get back to you. This is the dinner that I was literally in the state, like for the sole purpose of attending. And so he invites me to the dinner. I get there and I like work the room. I, talk to the content people and the developer and the CTOs. And eventually I get the introduction to Furqan. And we start talking, and I see all of these like parallels. And I think he saw them too of like, he grew up in the Bay Area. He had worked on a bunch of like e-commerce stuff out of like his parents' house. And so, there was a time where our garage was filled with like these boxes of clothing, of like hoodies for the stuff that I was selling online. And he had a similar story where his living room was filled with like cases that he was selling of his parents' house. And he's like, yeah, we have this thing that we're building. You should come check it out when you're back in town. And what he did was what anyone does when they sell a company or go public, which is he bought an abandoned military fort in San Francisco that he wanted to turn into like this founder haven. And I don't know if you've watched Monsters Inc., the kids movie before. It's like a factory where you come in and you leave like a monster. That was the concept for what turned into Founders Inc., which is a venture fund started by Furqan. And he basically comes to me after I'm like working out of the space for a little bit. And he's like, yo, like, do you want the job? Like, I joined on to be like the first growth marketing person. And I remember very specifically, he was like, I think we could build this into like an empire within tech. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm like 18 at this point. There's a Muslim guy. I think he's a billionaire. He's saying he wants to build an empire, and he's giving me one of the first jobs. I was in, right? Like I dropped out of school. Like I was ready. Like I was like, you know what? Like this is a worthwhile mission to go on. And, now today Founders Inc. is like one of the main accelerators or like, first landing spots for founders who want to build companies. And over the course of my time there, we incubated like something like 100 companies, or we invested in something like 100 companies. And as I'm like on top of the world at this point, mind you, we were doing hackathons with the Golden State Warriors. We were doing hackathons with OpenAI. Like it became like a very cool place to work. And it felt like I had like a really big part in building that. We had started like buying these like small software projects, and we'd like run them up to $1 million a year in revenue. And then we just like move on to the next one. Just we were doing it for fun, just for like the love of the game at that point. And so life was really good, alhamdulillah. And then I got into a car accident.
I've teamed up with Pomeroy, a full-service marketing agency founded by a Muslim businessman with over 20 years of experience. Whether you're building your business, improving your brand, or running a nonprofit, Pomeroy will help you improve your revenue, increase your return on investment. Visit pomeroy.com/Ansari and get a free consultation today, or just mention the podcast and you'll get a free consultation.
And so when you say like, what do you want to be remembered for? I remember sitting in that, like, I was on the Bay Bridge, which is the bridge that connects Oakland and East Bay to San Francisco, driving home from work, because at that point I lived in Berkeley still. And, I'm smack in the middle of this 5-car pileup. And I fully thought I was going to die, right? Like there was just this like moment of like peace, but also like deep regret, where I was like, I know how these things end up. Like I'm not making it out of this. And I like said my shahada again, and I just kept saying it and saying it. I tried calling my mom. It didn't work because there was no service on the bridge. And I had this like really deep sinking regret of like, I grew up in the Bay Area. I had a little bit of success at a young age. But if I had died today, I would have absolutely nothing to show for myself. Because, the friend group I had growing up, like I told you, I went to a HIF school. And so it was like a really interesting dichotomy of like, in an 8-person friend group during Ramadan, half of them would be like leading like Tarawih. And then, as people, like some people do, and they kind of like take a step away from the path for a little bit, some of them were doing like hard drugs. Like, and I was smack in the middle of that friend group. Alhamdulillah, I never had any experiences with drugs or alcohol or any substances, but I watched what that did to them. And in that like broader friend group, I was the bad influence to everyone's parents. Not because I was doing hard drugs or because I was, trying to take people away from Allah, but because I was working on something that they didn't understand. They didn't see how you could take things that you're passionate about and turn it into a business. They didn't see how you can build stability from essentially just like hanging out on the internet and like trying to build things that you want to build. And that was like a thing that I really like remembered in that time on the bridge, because I was like, dude, I felt like I had everything growing up. Like I had great parents, like a great family, I had like a strong group of friends. I had a little bit of monetary success. But if I died in that moment, I would have nothing to show for myself. And so it's in bed while I was recovering that I bought the domain for Alif, knowing that I wanted to build at the intersection of like tech and like Islam, but not knowing what it would be yet. And so, like to answer your question, like I want to be able to, if I were to be in that scenario again, or if I were to meet, inshallah, like the Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, um, I would want to be able to like look at myself and know that I did everything I could with the resources I was given, to like make an impact.
Hmm. And you said that in your recovery bed. So did you get injured in this car
Yeah,
accident?
yeah, alhamdulillah, it was nothing like fatal, but there was like a 2 or 3 week recovery period. I was at home, it wasn't anything like super gnarly, but enough to where I couldn't work. I wasn't supposed to be on screens. Like I was really just supposed to like rested, like on the bed, kind of like tilted up, and that was supposed to be it for like a couple weeks.
So can you tell me a little bit about Alif? I, if you look up online, it says that you support Muslim startups and help them going with networking, communication, community, and monetary. So tell us from your perspective what you guys do.
What we do is we really try to find people who look like they're building like semblances of what could be a world-changing business, and we just try to fast track them. Right. So instead of it taking someone a year and like scrounging around for connections, like, hey, if you have a good product and it looks like you're making traction, let me introduce you to like all of the investors that we know in San Francisco. Let me help you find a founding engineer, and we'll give you a little bit of money alongside it. Because, especially with the way AI is moving, distribution really is the moat, right? Like there's a saying of it's called best-selling author, not best writing. Too many people get caught up with how good their product is and what the tech stack is, and how they're going to monetize it, and not enough people, and those people don't spend enough time thinking about how am I going to get this in front of people so that they actually use it. And that's our differentiator. You come into our program, we're going to help you frame your company and position it in a way that you will be able to reach your customers, and you will know what to say when you reach them. You will be able to get in front of investors, and you will know exactly what to say when you talk to them. Because as I was in that period of recovery, and as I was thinking about what it was that I wanted to do with my life, the thing that kind of stuck out to me was I did a lot of work at like Muslim nonprofits growing up. I grew up at the masjid basically. I was there 7 days a week, hifz school, Sunday school, programs on the weekend, whatever. And it's almost like shameful to say that you're trying to do something for the money, right? But the way I see it, money is like the instrument of change. Like it is one of like the greatest like influence or like instruments of change. Once you have the money, you have the power to influence the outcomes that you actually care about. And so it felt very fitting that like with my background in startups and with my background in venture, it was a short background compared to like a lot of these other VCs, but it was a background. It made sense then to try to figure out some way to help people get the money, so that once they get the money, especially if their roots and their foundations with us, and these are Muslim founders, when they go on to raise millions of dollars and create millions or hopefully billions of dollars of value, now they are going about it they're going about it ethically, but they're also hiring Muslims or hiring, other interesting people that kind of align with their belief system. And now they have the resources and the ability and the network to make the changes and make the outcomes that we want to see happen in the world.
And how large is your fund currently, and how many startups have you guys invested in?
So we raised our entire fund in about a week, and it's not public. We haven't told anyone what the actual size of the fund is. But what we do say is every company that comes through the batch, we invest around $10,000. And we also will now double down on founders after they've come through the batch, where we invest between $200,000 and $500,000 as a follow-on round whenever someone comes through our program.
And how many startups have you invested in?
We've been around for a year, and we do batches, and so we'll have around 6 to 8 companies per batch. And so to date, we've invested in around 20 companies.
20 in 1 year. Mashallah.
Mm.
That's great. So what do you expect from a Muslim startup? Let's say a young or whatever age Muslim comes to you with a business idea, a startup. What do you expect from them coming in?
At the most fundamental level, we're looking for like, I don't know if you've heard of the term product market fit, right? Like once your product has found its market and it's able to generate revenue or generate whatever it's looking to make, I'm looking at like founder problem fit. How can we make sure that we're investing in someone that has a very like strong indication or a strong reason for why they're trying to solve the problem that they're trying to solve? Too many people will go into startups with this thing of like, yeah, well, Jensen did it and it looked cool, or my friend at Stanford did it and he made money, so I'm going to try to do it. We don't want to invest in those types of founders. What we want to do is find people who are, kind of like tactically thinking about solving a problem. They have an understanding of how they're going to distribute, and they have like, the ability to like want to learn. Like there's a very different, like you can kind of tell when someone is like the lifelong learner, like they're hungry to learn more, they're looking for advice, they're looking for mentorship, or they're open to it, versus the ones who come in guns blazing because they had some validation on their resume and they're like 100% certain that they're going to be a billionaire and they don't need anyone's advice. And so, someone that is willing to learn, someone that has a clear understanding of the problem that they're going after, and then someone who has some background in that problem, in that market, that shows that like you have a unique way of thinking about the market that doesn't already exist.
A strong why in a way.
A strong why and a strong how.
So, what's a common mistake that you find in Muslim startups when they come to you?
I think one of the main vices, and it's, one other thing I maybe should clarify is we don't just invest in Muslim startups, right? We're investing in the founders. So as long as they're Muslim, they could be working on anything. As long as, there's some bounds as to what we won't invest in. We have the mandate of we try to make sure everything we invest in is halal and et cetera. But all founders will kind of have, a lot of founders will fall into the pitfalls of building something without validating that people want it. They'll go into stealth like I did for like 3, 4, 5 months, and build out this thing that they think is super cool. And then you look at it and you're like, who would use, like, I don't get what this does. And then there's another problem of like, people will be like, okay, I have this idea. I'm ready to raise funding. And they'll come to me and they're like, I have this idea. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Show me. They're like, I need funding. Especially with how easy AI has made it to like prototype, or how, accessible it is to hire someone offshore for cheap or per trial, find someone on the internet who's willing to like work with you on it. There should never be an instance, except for maybe 1% of exceptions, where you are coming to someone to raise money without having any prototype or any working demo or any like V0, V1 kind of like built out.
What's one thing that stands out to you when someone comes to you? Like, we talked about a mistake, but now, like, let's say like a golden card. What's usually your ideal startup that comes to you?
There's two ways to answer that. The first one is we're looking at like spikes of greatness. And so like, it sounds ironic, but like the person who comes in and they're like a top 1% League of Legends gamer, or they were like 16 years old and they sold $1 million of sneakers on the GOAT app or StockX, or like, they were a YouTuber when they were 18 and they had 1 million subscribers, like something that shows that like they have been great at something, which implies that like they have the obsession, they have the innate like ability to like be a killer. Like they have what it takes to like go and build something great. So that's one component. The other component, which is a little bit less like, fa like in the air, is traction, right? It's like in the first case, we'll talk about a company that came through Alif Batch Zero, our first ever, cohort of founders that came through the program. They came in with almost no traction and no revenue, but the founders were like ex-quants. The founder, the Muslim founder that we invested in, I have known him for a couple of years, and he's like one of the smartest people I know. And so even though on paper it didn't look like, maybe the best investment, they left the batch with around $5 million in revenue 3 months later, and they had raised $8 million, valuing their company at $40 million for a company that existed for 4 months. And when they joined, they had no traction. But if you've spoken to these people, you would know that like, they have what it takes to like pull something off. On the flip side, Boycat came through our first ever kind of like program, and he had already come in with like 200,000 or 300,000 downloads. It was like 7 months into his company starting, and so we saw traction. We saw a proof. We saw an indication that like, okay, this guy went from like no real engineering background to building an app, and then it's like a consumer kind of like social space app or consumer utility tool. And so he did the hard thing of convincing people to download it and sign up. And so, yeah, maybe at that point there was no like financial monetization model, or the business plan hadn't been fully like thought out. But you could tell that like the guy's smart and he has traction and it's worth backing at that point.
So, what was it like building Alif? Was this your hardest project yet?
So the story of how Alif actually started, like tactically, was exactly a week and like maybe exactly a year and like 2 weeks ago. I put out a LinkedIn post. I was like, hey, today I'm excited announcing something new. It's the thing I wish I always had when I was building my first company. And it's just going to be like a 6 or 7 week program where you come in if you're a Muslim founder, and we'll give you access to mentors, help you fundraise. It was very kind of like thrown together because I knew that like, okay, I want to help Muslim founders build companies. That was all it was at that point. And whatever it'll turn into, it'll turn into. We did the batch and we had a demo day. We had one of like the main investors. His name's Mamoon Hamid. He's like the main partner at one of like the most successful firms in the Valley. He came and spoke along with Furqan and a couple of our other friends. And that validated this thing. If people were coming up to us and coming up to the founders after saying like, hey, like, you know, Alif's only been around for 3 months, but I started working on this thing in my nights and weekends. Like, oh, I think I want to leave my job. I'm taking a gap semester from school. And that was off of like 3 months of work, a couple LinkedIn posts, a couple Twitter posts. We didn't have an Instagram account yet. And so I was like, okay, like there's something here. So I left my job at Founders Inc. because I was like, this is the thing I want. Like I want to build something that I will be proud of, that I, you know, will serve the purpose of making sure that when I die, I have no regrets. And I did everything I could to like bring up the people around us. And so we went and we raised a fund. And then with Alif Batch 1, which was our second program, we tweaked it a little bit. We brought in, you know, we had thousands of applications this time around because a lot of people had heard about Batch 0. And we picked 7 of those companies. And I said, all right, like for these next 5-6 weeks, we're going to lock in with you guys. We're going to help you raise money. We had a company that went from 0 to $1 million in revenue 30 days after their launch. It was like, okay, we picked that one right. We had another company that raised their entire, you know, seed round. They raised $1 million a week after our demo day. It's like, okay, we picked that one right. There were a couple other companies that obviously didn't do as well, and still have faith in them. They haven't thrown in the towel yet. But to this point, we were like, okay, those guys, like maybe there was something to tweak as far as like our investment strategy. And as we were building Batch 1, it was this like, I remember this like rush of, you know, the term doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? Like that's like something that immigrant like families, and not even just Muslims, like the whole concept of like, you come to America and you tell your kids the way for stability, the way to set yourself up in life is you go become a doctor, you go become a lawyer, you go become an engineer. And that just never made sense to me. Because like, you know, I told you my story, like growing up, I wanted to do none of those three as like the end goal. And so for me, I was like, okay, look at the people around me who are most successful. And by successful, I don't mean monetarily. I mean, yes, there's some of them are very, you know, successful when it comes to the money they've made. But more importantly, a lot of like, I'm speaking more like from a fulfillment perspective, from like an alignment of deen and dunya perspective. You know, creators that we know, I think you're a great example of this, right? You have a Muslim podcast that I'm sure does well for you, that has, you know, gained a lot of traction, has impacted people. We have other friends who have built, you know, large creator kind of like led businesses. They've built, you know, their own kind of like, right, and investments, angel investments, companies that they've sold, CPG companies, cafes. And it just like did not make sense to me why in 2024 at that point we were still acting as though the only way to become successful was to go to college, graduate, and go do whatever else it is that you have to do, go work for someone else. And we opened, when we announced, you know, we had this idea basically of like, what if we just like brought everyone together, like the most ambitious people we can find. Let's just get all of them into a room together in San Francisco. We'll bring speakers so that people have an, you know, an extra reason to come out. But good things will happen if we just throw these people together in a room. And we decided to call it Alif Summit. And what ended up happening is in 5 weeks, we basically hosted one of like the largest Muslim builder conferences of all time. We started out with a launch video, which is exactly what I just said to you. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, but what if there was a fourth option? We said that because we look at ourselves as the fourth option. But we talked about, oh, there's rockets that land themselves and driverless cars, and we're still stuck at like the foundational layer of like what our parents told us we had to do 15 years ago. And so we threw up this LinkedIn post and we started doing the marketing, you know, linked the emails and the Facebook pixels and the ads and the influencer promotions, whatever. And 5 weeks later, we had like 600 or 700 people flew out from across the world to our little venue in San Francisco. And we brought out like some of our friends like Amjad from Replit and like, you know, Muslim founders who have built billion-dollar companies or who have built, you know, things that have created real sustainable impact, you know, globally. We had them speak. We had them tell their stories. Amir from Muslim, the biggest Muslim media company in the world, he was up there. Right after him was Rayuf, who created the hijab emoji with the founder of Reddit. Right after her was Harun Muhtazarda. Him and his brother sold a company for $1 billion cash. Right. And so we had all of these really interesting people. Amjad from Replit, you know, he's built a company that lets anyone take their ideas and turn it into code and turn it into a real production like product on their iPhone, talking about the future of building. Right. And what came out of that was on that day alone, there were millions of dollars invested into companies that we have nothing to do with. There were people who met their co-founders, who made friendships. There were a lot of like college kids who like took gap semesters after and moved out to SF without telling their parents and found jobs at like other Muslim-run startups. There were a lot of people who found jobs at this conference. But the thing I'm most proud about is everyone left that conference with, from what I understand, like an understanding that it isn't like, oh, we need to be like the best Muslim podcast or the best Muslim cafe or the best Muslim founder. We just want to be Muslim. and then just be the best to ever do it in our category. Forget about being like just being the best Muslim anything. We just wanted to be the best anything. And because of the caliber of people that were in that room, I feel that everyone left that room feeling like, yeah, like we have it. Like as a community, like we've got it. It isn't like, oh, we need to like catch up. Like, no, we're already there. We just need to come together now. And then the momentum from that spiraled into us getting an art gallery, right? We got an art gallery for the month of Ramadan, turned it into a co-working space. And I think that the theme here is like, we just did things like I've done for my whole life that seemed interesting, that we like tested loosely to see if people liked the idea. And then if they liked it, we doubled down and we put more effort into it. So in Ramadan, we got a co-working space, or we turned an art gallery into a co-working space. And in the nighttime, it was like Tarawih and halaqas and lectures, because San Francisco is a very spiritually dead place from like a institution perspective. There are no institutions that like, are well known for hosting halaqas and hosting like the spiritual component. A lot of socials, a lot of Muslims coming together, a lot of Muslims in the city, but there was no spiritual component. I'm not a scholar. Like I don't have that background, nor did I set out to like build this like really like, build this community of like, I did none of that. It was like, okay, we have this problem space that like is very interesting to us as a team. And Allah has kind of guided the rest of it. Like we make istikhara on every major decision. Like we make it a point to like, still praying tahajjud. We're making sure we never miss our prayers. We make sure we schedule our meetings around these things. And Allah has kind of like guided us throughout the rest of it. But we just followed our passions. We just followed the things that we were interested in. And there was no like, we're going to raise money and wear a suit and tie and like, do all this like stuff for like, it was just like, hey, we want to do this thing. I think there's good that'll come out of it. And so far, like there has been good that has come out of it.
There's so many nonprofits out there all promising the same thing, and we never know which one to actually trust, which one will actually invest our money into the future of the communities that they serve. That's why I've partnered with Human Appeal USA, because they don't just react to emergencies, they invest in their communities. They don't just give to the orphan and the poor, they invest in their education, their healthcare, and their future. Not just short-term reaction, but long-term investment. Donate at give.humanappealusa.org/Ansari podcast, where you can give to humanity and give to the Ummah. I'm so excited to be bringing you guys this exclusive opportunity for Ansari podcast listeners. We've officially partnered up with Alif to back the next generation of Muslim founders. We're partnering up to launch the Alif Network, a global pipeline into startups for Muslim builders. So if you're a developer, an engineer, a designer, a writer, a marketer, or more, and you'd like to work for one of the fastest growing startups in the world today, then head over to alif.build/network-tap or press the link in my bio and apply for free today. I think you guys are sparking, inshallah, a renaissance for Muslim Americans and therefore the rest of the Muslim world. And you, Alif and Friday and many other, you mentioned a couple of them actually, they're unknown, they're rich but not famous. We know them, but the viewers may not know them, and they're really working from behind the scenes, whether it's investing in Zeteo and the likes, to get things where they should be. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that, man. That's incredible work.
I appreciate that. And we're in this together, right? Like you have this podcast, this platform. I've watched your podcast before. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that have seen your podcast and seen the story of someone that you've brought out and realized that, hey, I could do that too. And gone on and kind of like, built their own journeys out that way because of you, because Allah put that in us.
Alhamdulillah. And what's so strikingly similar between us is we're both working to be the person we wanted growing up. That's all it is. They say a successful man is a child that never gives up on their dreams.
I like that. Yeah. MashaAllah.
If someone were to achieve what you've achieved by the age of 21, mashallah, at the age of 40, they would be pretty happy with themselves. So what would you like to do by the age of 40, 50, 60?
When we're growing up in America, and I'm sure other places in the world, you kind of have a path, right? Go to a good high school, do well in high school, go to a good college, do well in college, higher education, get a job, whatever, right? Like there is a path. And we now have tens or hundreds of cases of seeing the other route. In fact, with the way the world is moving, I would argue there has never been a better time and more stability in not doing the doctor, lawyer, engineer path. Because what happens if you get laid off? Think about how many people have been laid off from our community in the last months for speaking out about things that they believe in that their company doesn't believe in. Or because someone at some managerial level decided that hey, we need to cut half the company. And even though you were doing great at your job, because of something you couldn't control 2 levels above, now you're canned. And so I want there to be a fourth option. And I want us as Alif, and I want, myself as, servant of the company, of the people, whatever. Like, I want that to be something that we help bring. And I want us to become the fourth option. So, right now it's doctor, lawyer, engineer. What if it is creator, founder, investor? What if it is, whatever other version of that exists? I want us to help bring that to life. Because we talked a lot about, like, especially the event we were at, as a community, we need to come together, right? Like, October 7th happened, and that was a very traumatic incident for a lot of the world, right? And you would think that, you would think that would be a catalyst. And I certainly think it was. But in the weeks after it, I was like, hey, we were talking to people like, hey, what can we do? Like, how can we, help bring up the community relief efforts we can donate to, whatever. And at least in, the circle I was in, it felt like the extent of it was like, join these WhatsApp groups and go to these protests. And those are important. I'm not saying they aren't, but there's got to be more that we can do as a community with all the leverage that we've created to influence all of the outcomes that we care about globally, not even just one issue. And I think that a lot of that starts, again, at the career level. It starts at being self-sufficient. It starts at building a platform, whether that is a platform of having money to invest, whether that is a platform of having an audience to influence, whether that is a platform of having a cafe, just so that anyone, Muslim or non-Muslim, can come in and just like feel the Muslim hospitality that comes with our religion, right? And people just don't give themselves that permission because I went through it. You start something, people don't see what it is yet, and you're just like, oh, this kid's throwing his life away. That's like really hard to build something when everyone around you is telling you that you're throwing your life away, especially when those people mean well and it's not, and you know that it's not coming from a place of jealousy or envy. But I would love to be a part of creating a system that helps people, like platforms people to go and take their idea and just go with it. Maybe the first 10 fail. But if we're able to, as a community, just help people get back up and help them understand that, like, hey, you can build the thing that you want to build. You just have to start. I think we're leagues ahead of where we are today.
Yeah, Saad Yaqub said something very interesting about that, which is that politics is where power is communicated, where power is exchanged. It's not where power is created. Protests do nothing. If you look at the Zionists focused on technology, they focused on media, and they focused on banking and finances. And then they're able to leverage that power in those industries to then go into the political realm and communicate and to exchange. So when Muslims try to skip over finance and over technology and over media and get right to Washington or get right to a protest,
We've
you have
lost the
no
point.
power.
Yeah, you lost the
Yeah.
point.
Like, why would I listen to you when this guy holds literally my bank account
Mm-hmm.
and you don't own it? You're my employee, you know? So I think what you're saying is exactly right. And man, I've gone on multiple tangents about how my children will not be allowed. Inshallah, Allah blesses me with children, but they're not allowed to be doctors. They're not allowed to be. And
That's so
the only type of engineer they're allowed to be is like in science. But if they're gonna be, my dad's a civil engineer. If they're trying to go down their grandpa's route, nah.
yeah. There's just so much good that comes out of trying to create the world that you want to live in, right? Like, as a community, as an Ummah, we have a very different worldview than our neighbors might, or that, any other group might have. And so then, as a people that subscribe to that worldview, doesn't it then become our duty to try to build whatever we can, with good hearts and good intentions to help bring up ourselves and the rest of the world?
Yeah.
Um, and we have the network for it.
Bro, our brightest minds are going into pulling out teeth. Like how mind-blowing is that?
That's so funny.
Like every guy that I'm talking to, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just spent 40." I'm like, "You're so smart at learning that you're able to go to school for 4 to 8 to 12 more
You're
years,
talking about becoming a dentist.
becoming a dentist or becoming a surgeon or anything." Like imagine if Bassem Youssef stayed a surgeon.
That's funny. That's
Where
a good
would we
one.
be? He's a heart surgeon.
Yeah, mashallah. Smart
Imagine if he stayed a heart surgeon, man. He said he became a comedian.
man.
Like that's awesome,
That is
you
awesome.
know?
Yeah. And, even like on that point, maybe there is someone who, if they went down that path because they're genuinely interested in becoming a heart surgeon, they can then go become the best heart surgeon in America don't we want to see more Muslim? We just want to see excellence in general. Like that is part of our religion. We want to just create beautiful things. We want to build the right things with intention. But at the end of it all, like excellence is like so deeply ingrained in like the culture that we like grew up learning, and like the stories of the Sahaba that we grew up reading. But it feels like we've kind of lost that, like the why behind everything. You know, people will be the first in a halaqah you go to, they'll tell you, yeah, make sure you have a good intention, you clean your heart, you pray, you forgive everyone every night. But like work is, you know, arguably one of the biggest forms of worship that exists, right? And during Ramadan, you know, I love listening to the Yaqeen Institute videos. And so I remember one vividly right now of like everything you do in like those last 10 nights can be a form of worship if you set the right intention. Ya Allah, I'm sleeping right now, you know, as a form of worship to like rejuvenate my body, or I'm working right now because it is my responsibility to like provide for my family, or so that I can use this money to do good by you. And then after the last 10 nights, that just all goes out the window. And so like the work now you're spending, if you're working hard, you're working like 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day. Imagine if you just did that with the intention that this is so that I can create XYZ, so that I can go and do the thing I care about. Or even better, you're doing the thing you care about as you're building that company. Like with Alif, right? We were thinking about, when I started it out, I was like, do I want to be a nonprofit? Do I want to be a for-profit? Because again, like I said in, you know, the beginning of our conversation, it's like almost vilified to be like, oh, we're doing something and making money off of it. And I think that the concept of like building sustainable businesses has like gone out the water when you think about like, oh, I'm doing something for Muslims, right? And I wanted to make sure that we changed that, because at the end of the day, you don't build a company. You build people and you build systems. And those people and systems then go on to build the company. And so if you want a great company, you need great people. And you know, a lot of people talk about the brain drain that kind of comes with creating nonprofits and creating, you know, companies and organizations that don't have clear missions but like want to do good in general. You'll have the smartest person in the world work 9 to 5 at OpenAI and then 5 to 9 at this nonprofit. 3 months later, they've absolved themselves of the guilt and now they're back to just doing whatever they're doing full time. Why not create the system where if you have a specific thing that you want to see in the world, why not work on it full time and intentionally go about trying to make it so that that is the thing you can do full time? Great things aren't built part time. They can start out as a nights and weekends project, but they definitely won't get to any meaningful scale if you try to spend 3 hours a day, you know, kind of doing it.
Yeah, you have to spend 12, 16 hours a day.
I wouldn't have, like, you know, for Alif, the first like 60 $60,000 came from my pocket right before we went and raised a fund. I would not have been able to do that if I had spent my life, you know, just trying to work at, like, for example, the nonprofits that I worked at. And a lot of the projects that we're able to do, they cost money. Like our team, we have a great team. They cost money. We can't do those things sustainably if we aren't actively thinking about how do we build something sustainable? How do we build something that makes money? And so, you know, you've met some of the team that even isn't part of Alif now. A lot of those companies that I own outside of Alif are funding now the process of building Alif and allowing me, for example, I've never taken $1 out of the company. It's like in our fund mandate that I cannot legally take a salary, because that's how I was able to get the terms that I got for our investors. But that's fine for me. I'm not here living like, you know, I'm not scrounging pennies either, because we have the other systems that create the cash flow that allow us to build Alif and allow us to really spend on design, spend on video, spend on experiences. And I'm like very fortunate to like have been put in that position by Allah. But I do think that like when we're talking to these founders now, so many people are scared to charge, like both Muslims and non-Muslims. Like they think that, oh, if I, you know, put on a paywall and start charging money, no one's going to want to use it. If you don't have something that people would use, like would pay you at least a little bit of money for, they probably won't use it for free either.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So, what you said that you have multiple companies kind of bring you passive income. When did that happen? You didn't mention that in the story.
So what happened was I went to Umrah for my first time last February with my parents. And, you know, it was the most peaceful 2 weeks of my life, probably, or most peaceful like week and a half of my life. I consider myself like, oh, I don't cry, I don't do any of that. When we're walking around the Kaaba, I'm like bawling my eyes out. Like this is the most like peace, or like one of the closest moments I've ever felt to God. And I think part of that was the service in like Saudi. It's like very like, you know, you go to the masjid and like they have like the janitors and they're walking around with like smiles on their face because they're doing God's work. Like to them, there's nowhere they would rather be than like cleaning the floors of like the masajid there. Or like, you know, you go to a lot of like the fast food restaurants we went to, especially like in the haram, or like in like the clock tower, right? They're like very happy to be there. They're like, there's people coming and like, you know, swarming them, but they're like, yeah, here's your food. Some of the best service I've ever seen. This was around the time that like Sync Labs and like a certain AI model had come out that allowed you to send me a video of you speaking in English, and I could send it back to you of you speaking Japanese with your voice and your lips are moving as though you're speaking Japanese. And like when I saw that, I was like, okay, like this whole like language barrier, it's shattered forever. And so I was on this like thing of like, I'm not going to work while I'm here. I didn't take my laptop. I took my burner phone. Like I was like, I'm not, working while I'm here. But I just couldn't stop thinking again about this idea of like, what if we could get these people jobs? Like, there's like a level of entitlement slash like higher comp that comes when you work with Americans. But like, there are very talented, smart, capable people that work everywhere else in the world. What if we could give them an opportunity at like a San Francisco startup? Think about how hard they would work, or like how much you could change, their life. Or if you think bigger, like an economy, if you go to a Muslim country or any country, and you're like, hey, we're going to employ you at like 2 times what you would make if you did the same job, kind of like in your own country. And that was like the idea. And I called Rayan up right after I stepped foot off the plane in Doha, because that's when I was like, okay, Umrah's done, like I'm back. And I was like, hey, I have this idea. And at that point, he was still in school. He was working full time at a nonprofit, the one that I was working at as well, like, a couple years ago. And I was like, dude, I really think if you give me like 3 months, like, I'll invest in it. You can get a salary like for the first part. But like, this is your company. Like, I really want you. I think this needs to exist. And he took it and he built it into one of the fastest growing recruitment firms like in San Francisco, like in the ecosystem.
Oh, sure.
And, once we started seeing how well it was doing, I doubled down. And now I'm a co-owner of the business, although that's not, I'm sure it might be public around the time this goes out. But like, that's a good example of like, once we announce that, now whenever we have this audience that we have, we're able to then grow the economies of these other countries that we want to work with, while also creating more cash flow that we can then use to make Alif events better and, build an even bigger company.
Yeah. How do you make sure you don't burn out mentally?
I think
Because I've been
Islam,
struggling with that, man.
Islam.
Islam.
Like, I burnt out a lot when I was doing the crypto stuff and when I was trying to be in school, and, had really bad, like, I have health issues to this point. There was a period of time where I think I was in the ER like 40 times last year, 30 times last year. Yeah, I don't talk about it. Like, it's not like I'm tweeting about it, but been a lot of cases where I'm like, oh, something is seriously wrong with me, or like I've done irreparable damage to, like, inshallah not irreparable, but it feels like irreparable damage to my health and my heart and, like, certain things because of the lifestyle of like just how much we worked and how much I didn't care about my diet and like forget to eat for like 2 days at a time. And I realized after going to that extreme where I'm like, forget about mentally and financially, I might just like one day just fall down and die from like the way I'm living my life. That's when I was like, does any of it matter? Like, we are all on this path. Like, the effort is what matters here. Like, I want to be able to, inshallah, one day talk to Allah and say, like, look, I can stand here or sit here, like, and wholeheartedly know that I did everything I could with what you gave me to, like, do something that mattered, or like to be a good servant to the community, or like to be a good person in the Ummah. And sometimes you'll just get into the flow of like, I think you burn out when the thing isn't working and you're like not working with the right people. But like, if I'm down, someone else on the team is up. If someone else on the team is up, like, I'll be up eventually, and vice versa. Like, the things that, alhamdulillah, I think I have been blessed to have done right in the last year is we have a really strong circle around us, and we have enough infrastructure that we've built to where, again, unless one of us really messes up in like a really public way, I think the company will be able to account for and deal and manage any like mistakes that we will inevitably make as a company, as all companies do.
Do you have any, vice, I guess, that what is it called? They call guilty pleasure, I
Guilty
think.
pleasure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you have any guilty pleasures? You like ice cream too much or something?
Ooh, I've actually been on an ice cream kick recently. Um, I know I do. I'm trying to, like, my parents, when I was like 10 or 11, like, I'll say this straight up, like, they told me what porn was. They told me what drugs were. They told me what everything was. So that, like, when I'm like hanging out with my friends and they like show us this thing, I'm not like, oh, what's that? I'm like, no, I need to stay away from that. And so I lived my whole life without ever dealing in any kind of like, I can say this online because I know that if someone had saw me doing it, they'd come out and expose me. Never done drugs in my life. Like, I've
Sure.
never, had like a porn addiction, like any of those things that are like very crippling. Um, for me, it's always just been like a thing of, I'll get so deep in the work sometimes that I will shut out everyone around me. And that was a really big problem when I was working alone. But now that I'm working with people that I care about and that care about me, like beyond the work, those things get mitigated.
Do you drink coffee in the morning?
Yeah, of course. Like one day.
Yeah, Zuckerberg says he doesn't drink coffee in the morning,
If I had
which I thought was
how
wild.
many ever billions of dollars there, and my $1 billion, doctor told me to stop drinking coffee, I probably would too.
I don't know, man. Coffee's awesome.
We had an MMA kick, like Ryan and I, for a bit, and
You got a what now?
MMA, like we'd mixed martial arts, like we'd go to the gym in SF, and we'd get messed up there, and like that was for a while. Like I'd say, like that actually hurt our work a lot because you can't just like it's not like a gym, right? You go in, you put the headphones on, and you're out and you're kind of sore. Now you go in and you're like in mental physical torture for the next like 2 days up until you heal, and you go back again and you just get beat like beginner games, right? I'm just getting like thrown around. Like it was rough actually when we were going to those gyms. But I'm glad I can say that like I haven't had to deal with any of the vices that generally kind of happen.
Yeah, that's interesting that your parents did that, man. They gave you your own little
Yeah, like I was
personal health
it
class.
was I was with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf did it at like a class at like MCA at the masjid I grew up at.
Oh, bro, his porn tangents are A plus, man.
I don't
He can.
remember any of it. I just remember being traumatized. Like to be honest, I was like, I'm never one. There was like one direction up on the screen. And he's like, these are the devils, and I was like, I don't know what that means. But he's like, I don't know what that means, but okay, I got it.
That's
Like,
exactly it. I think it was like in 2012 or something. Bro, he went on those conspiracy Alex Jones. Well, it's not even conspiracy, it's true. He went on them Alex Jones type tangents way before.
really? Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't seen any of them.
He's like, "Damn, Hollywood's the devil."
I can agree with that. No, honestly, dude, I spent a lot of time in Hollywood in the last 2 years because some of our friends are like they own media companies there, and honestly, because I think I've seen so much of like what happens when you actually get all the worldly things without any of the deen, that scares me.
Yeah.
Like I've been to some like very like well known for being degenerate like celebrities' birthday parties, for example, back when I was younger and probably didn't know better. And like again, we'd stay away from any of the bad stuff. We'd like our eyes would be down 99% of the time, except for unless we're like talking to the person and saying what's up to them, happy birthday, whatever. And looking back on it, I'm like, that wasn't the right thing to do. I probably shouldn't have put myself in those scenarios. But I also will now be like, yeah, the little like, good feeling that may come from indulging in certain things is not worth it if it risks me ending up like that.
What do you mean like that? Why'd you say they're like the devil? What'd you see?
I'd go to some of these events like my non-Muslim friends, and they'd be like, "Dude, this is satanic." Like when I tell you, I've seen some like very like messed up stuff.
Like what?
Stuff I wouldn't say on a podcast. I'm probably to tell you after. But it's like very un-Islamic. Like I mean, there's just celebrities that have no God. Everyone has a God, actually. Everyone has something that they subscribe to as God, right? So some people it's money, some people it's women. To us, it's God, right? It's Allah. But if you don't have a God, you will end up following like whatever you deem to be one, anyways. And I think from seeing that now, I'm like, yeah, that's not what I want. Like I see what it's like to have everything they talk about in like the songs and the TV shows. I do not want that because I
Yeah.
see what it does to you, and I've seen what it does to a lot of my close friends.
Because it never ends. There's
You can
no.
never have enough. There's no initial, like, there's no inherent like internal satisfaction.
Yeah. In fact, the more you feel that desire, the more you want more of it, and then your tolerance for it increases, so the more you need out of it.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of these celebrities engage in sexual deviance, in orgies and the likes, because
Yeah.
they've got women.
Sure.
That becomes normal. They need something next.
Yeah. Also, like, I will say, like, actually, maybe we'll keep that offline.
Hey man, go ahead. I mean, unless you personally, I don't care if you say it.
I think it's more of a safety thing of things I don't want to mention.
It's a safety
Yeah, it's a
thing.
safety thing. But like I will say, like there have been things in my life that like, or other like people in my life that have been like very just like, if you have those types of people around, it's very hard to like fall into certain things.
Mm, yeah, man. So, how about the billionaire lifestyle
Sure.
or the billionaires you've seen? Have you seen them go down demonic routes, or are they
Not the
better?
Muslim ones, dude. Like not the Muslim ones. They're like the most stand-up people I know. Like we've met, like we were with some of them together when we were in DC. Like those guys will like, you'll talk to them and like you can tell that like maybe if they had some phase of like money getting to them, you wouldn't be able to tell today,
Mm,
right? Like I'm sure there's a human thing of like, oh shoot, when you see $1 billion hit your bank account, it'll do something to a person. But you have conversations with these people, and they're some of the most introspective, kind of like on dean people that like I know. And so I can actually like sit here and say that like of all the well-to-do, well-resourced Muslims I know, none of the ones that I have like spent any real time with are a negative influence or role model to me in any capacity. And in fact, because I think they have the ability to do so, they will go so far out of their way to like help wherever they can, make intros wherever they can, give guidance whenever they can, offer their time. Like it's also kind of funny because we'll talk to founders and we'll have to like set a time like 3 weeks in the future and we'll talk, our assistants will talk to each other. But with those guys, you just call them and either they'll pick up right away or they'll be like, I'll call you back in 5. um and I'm very, very, very fortunate to kind of have some of those people as like resources slash like role models to like look up to, because isn't that why we're both doing what we're doing, right? Like we want to be able to be the people that we look up to or that we didn't have to look up to. And now that we see that some of those actually existed along the way, they just weren't making Gary Vee content on the internet. Like now we can spend time with them and see what it's like to live on the other side.
Okay, so we have some fun questions that we ask at the end here.
Oh, really?
And one of them is, if you had one superpower, what would it be?
To know with 100% conviction every single time when someone is lying to me or what their like true intentions are.
Really?
Yes.
That is interesting. Okay, why?
Everything is just people, right? Everything is just understanding what does someone want and how can you either help them get there or how can you protect yourself from whatever that is that they want to do to you or take from you.
Mm,
Yeah.
because you're in a position where that's actually like a thing, right?
Sometimes we've had our cases.
Yeah. Okay. If you were to time travel to one place, future or past, observe or live, what
Mm.
would it be?
I'd love to be I'm sure it's a lot harder than just saying it, but I'd love to be around and alive at the time of Rasulullah.
Nice.
Right?
Okay, we usually make the caveat that you can't choose that one.
All right, man. Let's see. That's a good caveat, huh?
Yeah.
We talk all this talk about like, oh, we're building the future and like this is what the future is going to look like. I'm excited to be like 40 and 50 and see like what's actually happening because the world is changing so fast. And I feel like I was born at the perfect time for what it is that I want to do. There's the trope of like born too late to explore the earth and born too early to explore space.
Mm.
I think I'm right where I want to be.
Do you ever wonder, because like one thing I fear about being on the internet and this being the mode of my career is like, bro, what if, the apocalypse happens, nuclear war, and then everything that we're doing just goes dark?
um, if that happens, it's meant to happen. There are, we'll prepare for it as much as we can.
You're
We'll get
just,
the Faraday cages and the EMP protection and whatnot. I watched Leave the World Behind.
hey man,
Um,
you make an apocalypse bunker?
I would for fun, not like as a deviant, like oh the world's ending, but more so like it would be cool to have one, like get all your homies to like build it together as like a fun project. I don't know, I'm just yapping. But what I'm more worried about, to be honest, with the whole like with the internet and like the fact that you said like this is the mode of our career, is like the larger you get and the more of an audience that you accumulate, the more leverage you have to put yourself into like hellfire, like Jahannam. Like
Mm,
actually, if I say something without realizing what I'm saying and it influences a generation of people to go like do the complete wrong thing, I'm gonna be held accountable for that on the day of judgment. It's like
yeah,
even the reason we're in Dallas is we're here to talk to a lot of like the scholars about like what it is like that we can do now that like we have the venture side down, we have the business side down, but none of us are scholars. And so we want to be intentional about like not going down, not getting in too deep without checking ourselves and making sure that we're going about things the right way.
yeah. Because this path is a minefield, man. The
Yeah.
path we're on, whether it's business or
Yeah. What would you do
influence.
in the case of an apocalypse?
Case of apocalypse, I think I would be pretty happy about being able to just get a piece of land, get some sheep and goats and chickens,
Nice.
and just
Chickens.
just shepherd my way through.
Shepherd your way through.
I feel like you would make a startup of like bread.
Startup of bread.
Yeah, all right, let's
It's
make
like
let's make some bread. Let's make some
I'll
unique.
come work at your farm, man. It sounds like a good time, man. I'll do whatever you need me to do.
And you'd start putting the sheep to work, huh? You find a way.
Hey, man.
Okay, so what's the other one here? What's the other one, Raheem?
He's tired.
Get into Jannah.
Oh, oh, may Allah bless you, Ameen, when you get into Jannah.
Inshallah, amen.
Other than the Prophet, ﷺ, who would you like to meet or talk to, or what would you even like to do?
Dude, the cliche answer, family, right? Like, isn't half of our lives together is talking about like my parents are telling me this is right, this is wrong. You do right, this is how you end up in Jannah. Or like, other members of my family, like we're all like, okay, how do we build our life in a way that like allows us to enter Jannah together? And so then yeah, inshallah, if we end up there, it's like, oh, you get to see them and you feel like you did it.
Yeah, dude, everyone has such a beautiful answer to that question, and I can't shake that I really want to do what I wanted to do when I was 10,
Okay.
which is recreate Call of Duty, but I actually get to play it in person, you know,
I think
with
you
your
could do that
friends.
here, like with airsoft guns or like, BB guns and non-lethal guns. But
You know
yeah,
the Rust map? You
yeah,
remember the Rust
yeah,
map?
yeah, yeah.
Nah, dude, I wanna create the Rust map.
Oh man, yeah.
Jenna,
All right, that you got to wait for that one. Yeah,
full snipe,
I'll be there, man. Send me the link.
Send me
Send me the pin. I'll be there.
the Except the bullets actually feel good, you know.
I feel like that ruins it because then you don't have like, you're not worried about like getting shot, so you'll like be riskier than you would if you were in the game. The whole dynamics get thrown off.
Ah, interesting.
Like paintball is cool because like you won't die, but it won't feel great either. So you actually play it like it's worth playing.
I played paintball when I was 10. I remember I cried
Oh man,
because my cousin's 20
that's how it is.
and he just shot me in the back 10 times, just in the back, point blank.
Ooh,
I was freaking out so hard I didn't even know where I was getting hit from.
oh man,
It was bad.
sounds
He was
bad.
laughing. He was laughing the whole time.
Hey man, it's time to get your get back.
He's married now. Good for him. Yeah, man. I believe what you're doing is life-changing, inshallah, for the Ummah.
Inshallah.
And I pray that I haven't met anyone like you. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I appreciate that, bro.
And I pray that there is more like you. I
Inshallah,
mean,
I'm sure there are. Inshallah.
and that you'll make that happen. Because I pray that you're our next Bill Gates, man, the Muslim Bill Gates.
If I'm set up for all that, man, but I appreciate it. Wallah, I do.
You hear that one quote that Bill Gates is Genghis Khan and Mr. Roberts clothing.
Wow. I have not heard that, but that is pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's what you hear any like insider info on Bill Gates when you're in Silicon Valley or
Did you hear
Steve
insider info on
Jobs or-
everyone? Like you'll go to a party and like Elon and like Sergey are there, like the Google guys there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So-
His like Grimes has come to our office a couple times. I've met her. Like I met the kid Kyle XAE12 or whatever his name is. Like the funny thing and like the cool thing about working in SF is like everything feels so possible because all the people that you hear about doing impossible things are standing right in front of you.
Have you got to talk to any of them?
A couple. Yeah, 100%. Definitely got to talk to a couple.
And what were the conversations like?
Honestly, it's always like it's never like, a deep conversation, a 45-minute, hour-long conversation for the people at that level of like Elon Musk and whatnot. It's always just like a quick like, hey, what are you thinking about for the next like 5-6 months? Like, what is the single biggest problem? And they give their PR trained answer, and then you go tell your boy, hey, I just talked. It's not anything crazy. I look forward to a time where I'm able to sit down with some of these people and actually have a one-on-one for an hour or two and see what actually makes them tick and what they're actually going through.
Yeah. I mean, Omar Waseem, founder of Alif, thank you so much for joining the Ansari podcast. It was a pleasure to have you, bro.
Thank you for having me, bro.
And thank you guys for listening to the Ansari podcast. Are you a business that's confident that you're not backed by any Zionist or Israeli entity? Or are you a consumer that wants to be confident that you're not buying any product that's backed by any Zionist entity? Then download the Boy Cat app today. If you're a business, use the Ansari code Ansari10 to be marketed, promoted, and recommended to anti-Zionist consumers across the globe. And if you're a consumer yourself, then download the Boy Cat app for free and be confident that you're not spending or investing your money in any Israeli or Zionist product. Hey, Salam guys, we're trying to build more studios, hire more people, and create more shows that you guys will love and enjoy. If you guys want to invest in us, then go on patreon.com/Ansari podcast and support us today.